This young teacher, Nosa, arrives in an African village full of beautiful girls with the sole objective of taking away the innocence of all the girls there in just one day. Nosa was young, but his demeanor and eloquence gave the impression that he knew exactly how to solve any problem. Moreover, his smile, warm and sincere, had a peculiar power. It could calm anyone. The families in Ombil were tormented by a cycle that seemed impossible to break. Their daughters dropped out of school, often due to unwanted pregnancies, and with each dropout, another dream faded away. The government, alarmed by the statistics, knew that something had to change. After much discussion, they made a decision. They would send a special teacher, someone capable of inspiring and educating. That someone was Nosa. The day he arrived, Ombil was livelier than ever. The villagers gathered under the great ndabo tree, a sacred symbol for them, adorned with colorful fabrics as a gesture of welcome. The air was charged with excitement and hope, something rare in the village. Mothers, draped in their vibrant traditional attire, whispered among themselves. They say this teacher has a special gift. Yes, he's here to save our girls. The elderly village leader, Baba Kalechi, a man whose deep voice resonated like a drum, was in charge of the welcome. He slowly walked to the center of the circle and extended his hand toward Nosa. "Teacher Nosa, our daughters are flowers in a storm. We need you to protect them, to guide them toward a better future." The young teacher nodded solemnly. His voice, firm yet kind, filled the air. "I am here to teach them to protect themselves, to make wise decisions, and to value their education above all else. With your support, we will ensure that every girl in Ombil has the opportunity to choose her own destiny." Nosa's words resonated deeply in the hearts of the villagers. But there was something more than Nosa's words. There was a spark in his eyes, a glint that few noticed but spoke volumes beyond what his lips conveyed. Nosa quickly became a central figure in the village. The day after his arrival, he began teaching under the shade of the mango tree in the schoolyard. His teaching methods were different. He spoke gently, used everyday examples, and turned every lesson into a captivating story. The girls, who previously avoided school, began attending with enthusiasm. "Education is your shield," Nosa said in a calm voice, holding a notebook in his hands. "It's the one thing no one can take from you, and with it, you can build the future you desire." The parents watched from a distance, amazed. "It's a miracle," said an elderly woman, watching her daughter take notes in class with pride. "Yes, it seems our problems are over," replied another, clasping her hands in a silent prayer. However, while the girls laughed and learned, while the parents celebrated and gave thanks, the glimmer in Nosa's eyes remained, hidden behind his charming smile. No one suspected that this young teacher, who had arrived as a savior, was about to alter life in Ombil in ways no one could imagine. The days in Ombil passed with renewed energy since Nosa's arrival. The girls, once shy and reserved, now showed an enthusiasm that lit up the schoolyard. Nosa had a special gift for capturing his students' attention. He spoke to them as if each one was important, as if his words were meant just for them. Each lesson was wrapped in stories and metaphors that made the topics easier to understand. One day, holding a small latex object in his hand, he said, "This, my dear ones, is a shield. It not only protects your bodies, but it also protects your dreams. It's the key to avoiding mistakes that could close the doors to your future." The girls looked at him intently, their eyes wide open. Some even took notes with dedication, while others marveled at how directly yet respectfully he spoke about topics that had been taboo until then. "Always remember," Nosa continued, "your education is your greatest treasure. Do not let anything or anyone take it away from you." From a distance, the parents watched the change with satisfaction. A mother, named Adesina, commented excitedly, "It's incredible how our girls now run to school every morning. I never thought I'd see them so motivated again." "Nosa is a blessing," replied Baba Kalechi, the elderly leader, leaning on his cane. "It's as if the gods sent him to save our village." However, not all signs were so encouraging. Although the girls showed respect and admiration for Nosa, more complex feelings began to arise. The way he looked at them, his charming smile, and his always kind tone awakened something in their young hearts, something they themselves didn't fully understand. At first, Nosa's gesture seemed innocent, a hand on the shoulder here, a playful compliment there. "You have a brilliant mind, Edaora. You'll go far one day," he told one of the girls, making her blush. But over time, his words and actions began to cross boundaries that no one noticed, except him. One afternoon, after a lesson on the importance of protection, Nosa clapped his hands to get the class's attention. "Today, we're going to take things a step further. Learning something in theory is fine, but understanding it in practice is much better." The girls exchanged curious glances. They weren't sure what Nosa meant, but they trusted him completely. After all, he was their teacher, their guide. "Don't worry, this is for your benefit," he said with a smile that seemed to reassure them. "I need one of you to help me first." A young girl named Imaid hesitated but raised her hand, willing to volunteer. The admiration she felt for Nosa was evident on her face. He motioned for her to follow him into a small room at the back of the classroom. "Here we can practice without distractions," he said, closing the door behind them. Inside the room, Nosa's tone changed. His voice became softer, almost a whisper. He pulled out a package and began explaining how the object he had shown earlier in class worked. "Don't be afraid," he told her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "This is just part of the lesson." Imaid, innocent and trusting, followed his instructions to the letter. But what began as a lesson soon took a dark turn. Nosa crossed boundaries she didn't know how to stop. When it was over, Imaid left the room silently, her eyes fixed on the ground. "What happened in there?" one of her friends asked. Imaid simply shook her head and murmured, "Nothing. Just a lesson." The pattern continued. Day after day, Nosa called a new student into the room, always under the pretense of teaching them something important. Each one emerged with the same heavy silence, too ashamed or confused to speak. He warned them that what happened in that room had to stay between them. "Don't tell anyone, not even your parents. This is for your own good," he said in that soothing voice that made the girls unable to doubt him. Meanwhile, the rest of the village still believed Nosa was a hero. But a young man named Kaido, known as the village prankster, started to suspect something. He had noticed a strange pattern. The girls left class differently, quieter, more withdrawn. One afternoon, hiding behind a tree near the classroom, Kaido decided to observe more closely. What he saw through a crack in the wall left him breathless. However, instead of shouting or confronting Nosa immediately, Kaido smiled sinisterly. In his mind, he was already planning how to use this information to his advantage. What would you do if you were in Kaido's shoes? Would you confront someone who is so beloved by everyone, or would you take a different path? Leave your opinion in the comments. And if this story has you as intrigued as I am, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. There's still much more to uncover in this tale. Kaido, known in Ombil for his cunning and sharp tongue, knew he had found something that could change his fate. That night, as Nosa was returning to his small house on the edge of the village, Kaido emerged from the shadows like a predator stalking its prey. "Teacher Nosa," he said in a voice soft but loaded with intent, "you've been quite busy lately, haven't you?" Nosa froze, his usual smile vanishing for a moment. Quickly recovering, he tried to maintain his composure. "What do you mean, Kaido? I've just been doing my job, nothing more." Kaido let out a low laugh and crossed his arms, staring him straight in the eye. "Oh sure. Doing your job." With quite a bit of enthusiasm, I'd say. Nosa felt his heart begin to race. He tried to walk away, but Kaido stepped forward, blocking his path. I saw what you did today with a maid, Kaito said, his tone sharp as a knife. I saw everything. For the first time since his arrival in the village, Nosa didn't know what to say. He swallowed hard, trying to stay calm. You don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about, Kaito replied with a twisted smile. And I also know what would happen if the parents found out. Can you imagine it? Baba Kalechi gathering the whole village under the ndabo tree. What a spectacle that would be. Nosa tried to deny it, but Kaito cut him off. Relax, teacher. I'm not the kind to go around spilling secrets. At least, not without a good reason. Nosa eyed him warily. What do you want, Kaito? Kaito leaned closer, his eyes gleaming with malice. It's simple. After you finish your private lessons, I want you to send the girls to me. Let me enjoy some of that special education too. Nosa felt his blood run cold. The thought of sharing his secret with someone else turned his stomach, but he knew he had no choice. Kaito had the power to destroy him. After a few seconds of silence, he nodded slowly. Fine. But you have to promise not to say anything. Kaito grinned widely, baring his teeth like a wolf that had just caught its prey. Deal, teacher. From that day on, a dark alliance was born. While Nosa continued his routine of selecting a student and taking her to the small room, Kaito waited in the shadows, ready to receive the girls as they came out. Go to my friend Kaito, Nosa would say with a feigned smile. He'll help you with the next part of the lesson. The girls, still confused and trapped in a cycle of manipulation and fear, obeyed without question. Kaito, always ready, welcomed them with deceptively reassuring words. You're safe with me. Don't be afraid. The secret between Nosa and Kaito seemed secure, but with each passing day, the shadows they cast grew longer and darker. What they didn't know was that the cracks in their plan were already beginning to form. For a time, the dark pact between Nosa and Kaito seemed to work perfectly. The girls, wrapped in fear and confusion, didn't speak up. Each thought she was the only one who had experienced something strange, and shame kept them silent. However, the weight of what had happened wasn't something they could carry forever. One afternoon, by the banks of the Omi River, a group of girls gathered to fetch water. Their usual laughter filled the air as they helped each other with the heavy pots. But one of them, a young girl named Amara, sat silently on a rock, staring vacantly at the flowing water. Are you okay, Amara? Asked Simi, her closest friend, noticing her sadness. Amara hesitated, nervously fiddling with the folds of her skirt. Finally, she murmured, I haven't felt right since my last lesson with teacher Nosa. The entire group fell silent at those words. Simi frowned, leaning closer to Amara. What do you mean? Amara looked around, making sure no one else could hear. He asked me to help him with something in the small room. And then, her voice broke and tears began to stream down her cheeks. The silence that followed was heavy until another girl, Ika, spoke in a trembling voice. He called me last week too. He said it was to help me, but... Me too, added a third, staring at the ground. One by one, the girls began to share their stories. The words came out haltingly, between whispers and tears, but it soon became clear that none of them was alone. What Nosa and Kaito had done wasn't as secret as they had thought. Why didn't we tell anyone? Asked Ike, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. And who would believe us? Replied Amara, her voice bitter. They'd blame us, say we provoked it. The group nodded in silence. Their hearts were filled with fear but also with simmering anger. Simi, always the bravest among them, stood up suddenly. This has to stop. We have to do something. Like what? Asked Eka, incredulous. talk to our parents, risk being blamed or ignored. If we don't, it'll keep happening, Simi replied firmly. We have to find a way to make the truth known, no matter the risk. Although some girls hesitated, the seed of change had already been planted. That night, under the starlit sky of Ombil, the young girls began to devise a plan to expose what had been happening. They knew confronting Nosa and Kaido wouldn't be easy, but they also knew they couldn't keep living with this weight in their hearts. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the village, the parents began to notice something strange about their daughters. Amara, once cheerful and lively, barely ate. Who always helped with chores, now seemed distracted and absent. Something's not right, said Mama Amara to her neighbor, Mama Ike, as they washed clothes by the river. I've noticed it too, Mama Ike replied, frowning. Our daughters are changing, and it's not for the better. The murmurs among the parents grew, and soon, the suspicions turned into open concern. One morning, a group of mothers gathered under the great Ndabo tree to discuss what was happening. We can't stay silent, said Mama Amara, striking the ground forcefully to emphasize her words. If something bad is happening, we must find out. Baba Kalechi, who had been listening silently, rose and spoke in his authoritative voice. Let us call our daughters here. They will tell us the truth. That afternoon, under the sacred tree, the girls were summoned. The air was thick with tension. Baba Kalechi, standing before them, looked at them sternly. Speak, he ordered firmly. What troubles you? What are you hiding? For a moment, the girls remained silent, their gazes fixed on the ground. But Simi, her heart pounding in her chest, stepped forward. It's Teacher Nosa, she said finally, her voice trembling. He calls us for private lessons, but they're not real lessons. He's doing things to us. A mother's gasp broke the silence, and immediately, the girls began speaking all at once, confirming Simi's words. But the most shocking revelation came when Ike added in a whisper. It wasn't just him. He sent us to Kaido too. A roar of rage filled the air. The parents, who had blindly trusted Nosa, felt their trust transform into fiery fury. Baba Kalechi raised his hand to silence the crowd. Tonight, he said in a voice that thundered like a storm, we will find Nosa and Kaido. These men will answer for their crimes. What would you do if you were in the mother's shoes? Would you seek justice on your own or trust the authorities? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if this story has you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to subscribe. What's coming next will be unforgettable. That night, the village of Ombil was silent, but it wasn't the usual calm. It was a tense silence, broken only by the crackling of lit torches carried by the villagers. A group, led by Baba Kalechi, advanced like a dark tide toward Nosa's house. Their fury pounded in their hearts like a drum, and each step they took resounded with determination. In the small house at the edge of the village, Nosa was writing in his notebook, unaware of the storm approaching. Kaido, however, had already heard rumors and came running, gasping for breath. Nosa! He shouted, bursting in without knocking. They found out. The parents are coming for us. Nosa's pen froze mid-air. He looked up, pale as a ghost. What? The girls talked. Kaido continued, his voice shaking. They told everything. If they find us here, we're finished. For the first time, Nosa lost control of his expression. His mind raced as he stood up abruptly. We have to leave. Both men began hastily packing their belongings, shoving clothes and valuables into bags. We'll go to the city, Nosa said firmly. No one will find us there. But what Nosa and Kaido didn't know was that Baba Kalechi, anticipating their escape, had sent the village guards to close off the exits. When the two men reached the large wooden gate marking the edge of Ombil, they were met by the glint of spears under the moonlight. "Where do you think you're going?" one of the guards asked in a cold tone. Kaido tried to speak, stammering. "We were just going for a walk." The guard let out a bitter laugh. "With bags full of belongings. You're going nowhere." Before they could react, Nosa and Kaido were seized and bound with thick ropes. The guards marched them back to the village, where a crowd awaited with faces filled with anger and betrayal. In the central square, under the great Ndabo tree, the village elders formed a circle around the two men. Nosa and Kaido, on their knees, avoided the gaze of the crowd. Baba Kalechi stepped forward, his imposing figure illuminated by the torchlight. "You came to this village as a teacher, Nosa," he said gravely. "We entrusted you with the future of our daughters, and you betrayed that trust." He then turned his gaze to Kaido. "And you, Kaido, betrayed your own people by aligning yourself with this man." The crowd roared in agreement. Two men holding leather whips approached, and the punishment began. Nosa's and Kaido's screams filled the air as the leather cracked across their backs. The crowd did not look away. Each lash was a declaration of justice. When the whipping finally ended, Baba Kalechi raised his hand to quiet the crowd. "This is not the end of your punishment. Nosa, you will work for the families of the girls you have harmed. You will care for them and for the children born from your betrayal, until the last day of your life." He turned to Kaido. "You, Kaido, will serve this village as a laborer. You will work the fields and maintain the roads, and you will never again go near our young women." The crowd cheered as the two men were dragged away to their fates. In the days that followed, the village began to heal. The girls, though scarred by their experiences, found solace in their families. Mothers held their daughters close and whispered words of love, while fathers vowed to protect them with all their strength. The elders introduced new rules to ensure nothing like this would happen again. Every teacher would be carefully vetted, and no one would ever be alone with the girls. In time, the laughter of the young girls once again filled the air. Though they carried scars, the community's unity helped them regain their strength. And so, the story of Nosa and Kaido became a tale told around campfires, a reminder of the dangers of blind trust and the power of a community to stand together against injustice. Ombil, though wounded, emerged stronger than ever, with a shared promise to protect its own at any cost. If you want to hear more stories like this, subscribe and turn on notifications. See you in the next video.